picked our data warehouse and we've connected to the tables that we want to use for our marketing use cases, we now have access to be able to tap into all of that data without having to write SQL, without having to go bug our data engineers to write a query for us. All of that is at our fingertips and really is the core of GrowthLoop's capabilities to be able to build audiences off of that data. There's a few ways we can get to audience creation. First one being on the homepage, also through the nav panel on the left-hand side. There's also multiple ways that we can go about building audiences. The first one being templates. So templates are a great way to standardize the way that your marketing or business users get to campaign activation. Any templates that you've saved within your application will appear here. We can pick this abandoned cart high value template. You'll notice that it opens a copy and gives it a title automatically. You'll see that we have 62,000 customers that fit the criteria of this template. And then all of the filters and settings that I've saved previously in my template will appear here. Global audiences that we can include or exclude, a standardized set of customer or demographic data that can include location, age, purchase information, really anything that lives within your BigQuery or data warehouse. I can add, change, and edit any of these filters to my liking, but I have a standardized way as a baseline to start creating an audience. The second way that we can build is from scratch. So instead of using a template, maybe I want to define and build out my filters and criteria from the ground up. We can give our audience a name. You can see the data set group that we are building off of. We can add tags and filters to the audience. So if you want to categorize and have folders for how you search for your audiences in the future, it's a great way to categorize them. And then in the middle, you can think of this almost like a Notion document or a Google Doc, where we can build out titles, we can give comments, and then we can add all the filters and criteria that are applicable to the segment that I want to build. So maybe I want to start with a header. This could be global audiences. Under global audiences, I can get right into filtering, but maybe I want to add audiences that I've previously created within my GrowthLoop account. Maybe there's another retail audience that I want to either include or exclude right away. I can set that at the top of my audience build here. In the next section, maybe we want to make another section for C360, golden profiles, whatever you call your unique look at your customer base. Switch this back to filter. And then anything that lives within my customer data set will be available for segmentation. So I can add states that people live in. Very easy to point and click on filters or values that I want to include. And then anything else that lives within my customer table is in a nice point and click, easy to see segmentation interface instead of having to write SQL against this data. If my data science team is building propensity models, those can be presented in very easy to use or simple buckets, in this case of product categories. We can add any filter within this data set. Maybe we want to add one last section here for other data sets, and this could be additional data that is not our customer 360 or golden profiles that we want to join to our audience build. We can switch this to data sets, and maybe in this case we want to include abandoned cart information. So we can look at any event that happened that's greater than 0. So this is basically saying, give us any abandoned cart event, including customer profile information that matches this criteria. In that abandoned cart data set, any data that's included can be presented here. This could be the number of transactions that happened or the number of items in their transaction. It could be the total transaction value, when the transaction or the cart add occurred, the product type. Sky's the limit for how you slice and dice this data, but we can include multiple data sets within one audience build. The third way that we can build an audience within the GrowthLoop application is using Marve, the Gen AI product that GrowthLoop offers. Marve has a few ways that we incorporate it into the GrowthLoop application. One is on the homepage. If we scroll down a bit under audience discovery, this is a more proactive approach to Gen AI where GrowthLoop is going to be using a pre-trained LLM that can also be kind of a bring your own LLM if you have one that's running on Cortex, Vertex AI, and GCP. A lot of options for how we integrate that, but we can use that LLM to suggest audiences within the app itself. This can be based on past campaigns that you've run within your GrowthLoop account. It can be based on interesting fields that live within the data warehouse. That could be lifetime value, any machine learning or data science scoring that you're doing, like propensity modeling. We'll look at the titles of the fields that are in the warehouse, as well as the descriptions, and suggest audiences with titles and descriptions on the homepage here. The flip side of that is going to be more, I want you, GrowthLoop, to tell me what fields or what data I can pull out of my warehouse based on the campaign that I'm trying to run. So this is called Audience Studio. This is like a Google Gemini or ChatGPT-like interface where you can tell us what you're trying to do for your campaign. In this case, I toggle on churn win back. You can set presets for the goals for your campaign. And then I put in my prompt of customers that made a purchase over a year ago and they have an apparel product propensity. This will take 10 to 15 seconds to generate. I've already run this before, but this will put out 1 to 4 suggested audiences with titles and descriptions. This one looks interesting here. Apparel enthusiasts on the verge of churning. I hit create. This actually opened up in a new tab where it auto-applied the title of the audience. And then you'll see that it pulled out last purchase date happened over 365 days ago, and our product propensity is equal to apparel. Now, this is a good start for marketers or business users, so they don't have to go sift through hundreds of fields within their data warehouse. They can also tweak and edit this audience just like a normal audience build. It's a great way to get to a starting point for building an audience without having to spend a lot of time deciphering what is in your data warehouse. Once we have a good audience build with criteria that we think is going to be nice for activating in a campaign downstream, there's a few things we can look at before actually exporting this audience. We get our real-time audience count at the top. We're counting the number of rows that live in the warehouse based on this criteria. And then we also present some metrics that are going to be important before exporting. We can tie a revenue number to our audience. This is basically a calculation on a field that we choose in the audience builder. So that could be lifetime value, total purchase history. We're basically taking this 30,000 and adding a field to give a revenue number within the UI. If you're interested in doing treatment and control splits, that could be for A/B testing with content. It could be to just do a holdout group to see how a campaign is working. GrowthLoop allows splitting out that treatment and control split automatically for you and then tracking it as the audience changes over time. So if we wanted to export this to paid media and email, we can make sure that we're using the same treatment and control split across both of those channels downstream. We can also add breakdowns to see a makeup of our audience before actually exporting it to a downstream tool. Very privacy and security focused here, where we're not giving marketers access to a profile view where they could potentially look at PII, but instead getting a general breakdown of who's in their audience and how it's made up before hitting export. Once we're ready to go, we can hit export at the top right. We'll be presented with a modal that includes all of the destinations that I've configured in my GrowthLoop account. By no means is this the full list of destinations that we support, but typically it's going to be paid media or ad channels, other CDPs, potentially CRMs. We could export to a CSV if we have the right permissions. We could send this back into a warehouse, and then we can activate back into email channels. Very easy to just point and click, pick which one we want to export to, and then there's some settings as far as what this export's going to be called, in this case for Facebook ads. And then we can set this up to be ongoing one time, as well as schedule some frequency and export schedules within the app itself. Once this all looks good, just hit export and you're ready to go. This audience should show up in Facebook within a couple minutes.